Well, I don't want to answer that yet, so let's get to it.
All right, let's do it. Cool. All right, hey guys, what's up? It's Dean with Manful Yoga. Today I'm joined by Al Kavadlo. Am I pronouncing that right, Al?
Kavadlo, yeah. Hey. What's up, guys? What's up,
Okay.
Dean? Good to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, glad to have you here. So Al has he's been in the blogosphere for a long time now. He has his personal brand of fitness, and then he also works with progressive calisthenics, which he'll talk a lot about later. He's got a lot of ebooks out, and a lot of them are really strongly influenced by yoga, which is what originally got me interested in talking with Al. So I reached out to him a few months ago, and he's really nice. I told him about my ebook and if he had anything that I could help promote. So we did that little cross promotion, and then I reached back out, I think a month ago, and he told me about a new book he's working on, and so I read it. I got a lot of questions for him, and I'm excited to see what value Al can bring to the Manful Yoga community. So Al, again, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first question I want to talk about. Well, first is just basic. I saw that you grew up in Chicago, or that you started working in Chicago. You eventually made it to New York. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm in Cleveland right now, and I went to school in Wisconsin, in Madison. So are you happy to be out of the Midwest and into Brooklyn or wherever you are in New York now? Or?
I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm a native New Yorker, and I wound up in my 20s living in Chicago for a while, and that's where I got my start in personal training. I was working at a gym out there called Lakeshore Athletic Club.
Okay.
And Chicago was a great city, and I moved back to New York in 2005, and that was kind of when I really started taking things to the next level with pursuing personal training as a career and really deciding, like, all right, this is what I'm going to do with myself.
Mm-hmm. Did you have other ambitions, or did you want to do other stuff?
Well, when I was a kid, we were talking about this a little bit before. I was a musician. That was my first love, so I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a rock star. Mm-hmm. And I always joke that even though my musical ambitions didn't really turn out like I hoped, I kind of get to feel like a rock star, getting to do the PCC certification, getting to travel the world and teach calisthenics, and it's a much healthier lifestyle than being in the music biz. So everything kind of worked out for the best.
A little bit more healthy.
How things unfold.
Yeah, you are a rock star now. So
thanks very much.
I read the foreword of his book, of his new book, Zen Body. What is it? Zen Body, Zen Warrior, Zen Spirit Body.
Called Zen Mind, Strong Body.
Zen Mind, Strong Body. Yes, which is very yogic, which is why I jumped out. I was like, whoa, that sounds just like yoga. So, yeah, the foreword has your experience of you and Mr. Fitch.
Mike Fitch, yeah.
Yes. He's the creator of Animal Flow, right?
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate to be able to get Mike to write the foreword for this book. He and I, we go way back. We've been friends for a long time, and it's been kind of cool for the two of us to kind of be there for each other along this journey as we've both, kind of grown in the fitness industry, to kind of have somebody who's doing that too, who you can kind of commiserate with. And I've wanted to have Mike involved in one of my projects for a long time, and I was really excited to be able to have him in this one, have him write the foreword.
Nice. Yeah, he's I've seen his videos before. He's dude is jacked, and he's Animal Flow is something really cool. I haven't seen it before. It's nothing like I've seen before. So you guys are interested in Animal Flow. He's got some really cool videos on YouTube. But the rock star part, so him and Mike were working out, and they're doing their calisthenics out in a park, and someone comes up and says, hey, can I take a picture with you guys? And Al is, Mike describes it, Al's very humble about it. He's like, with us? Like, why with me? Like, you want to take a picture with me? Why? Yeah, Al's a humble guy, but he's, don't let that fool you. He's very well known. So he's very accomplished. Anyways. Glad to have him here, but let me ask you some more questions before I go on how great you are. So I read the book front to back, and a few things jumped out at me. So the first is that Al, you really emphasize making a plan that works for you, instead of following a cookie cutter plan. Number two, you don't really, the same thing goes with diet. You don't give any absolute rules. You just tell people, well, here's what here are some guidelines that you should abide by. And number three, quality over quantity is huge. And it doesn't seem like you kill yourself in your workouts. It looks like from everything that I've read, it's more about just training smart and working towards goals instead of just trying to go out first day and nail a handstand if you haven't done one before. So can you talk to me a little bit more about your approach to just, I guess, life, fitness, just in general, going off of what I said?
Yeah, I'm glad that you got all that from the book, that was conveyed effectively. But basically, it's like you said, I'm more about the process, and I want people to not be too hung up on, oh, I'm going to master the handstand in 6 weeks, or I'm going to get a human flag by next Thursday, but rather just embracing the journey and committing to doing whatever you're able to do right now with complete presence and giving it your fullest attention, and trying to immerse yourself in enjoying it for what it is rather than simply using it as a means to an end, as, oh, I want to lose weight, so I have to suffer through this thing I don't like, or, oh, I'm not happy with this part of my body, so I have to do this exercise in order to get to the other thing where I'm going to suddenly feel better about myself. It's kind of like, no, just be here now, accept things for what they are, and stop chasing some fantasy that is never going to really happen for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I actually wrote a blog it was probably a year ago actually, and it's kind of similar. I described it a different way, but the key to like getting ripped, as I like to say, it's not reaching a certain point and then saying like, okay, I'm ripped now. It's more like you're just living the lifestyle of someone who happens to look like that, and that's how it happens. You live that lifestyle and you enjoy it. You don't just get there and you're like, okay, I made it, I'm done, whatever.
Right. It's an ongoing process.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're very much about living. You actually mentioned in your book, you're baffled by people who try to drown out their workout with music. You're like,
yeah.
So yeah, you say
music, TV, magazines, people all over, in mainstream gyms. There's just so much emphasis on distraction, and I want people to be present. And it's like people feel like, oh, I don't like working out, so if I watch TV while I'm doing it, it won't be so bad. My whole thing is, hey, if you focus on doing it, maybe you'll like it. Like, don't assume it's going to be a miserable thing just because you have this preconceived conception of what gym class was when you were 8 years old or whatever.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. You need to enjoy what you're doing. Next question. Actually, I'll go back to kind of the question that I asked. Quality over quantity. Can you talk a little bit more about how you approach your workouts and how you try to focus more on quality instead of the quantity of the reps you're doing?
Yeah, there's a lot of emphasis in certain communities on doing a certain workout in a certain amount of time or doing a certain number of repetitions, regardless of how good the form might be.
CrossFit.
My thing is, kind of the other end of the spectrum is saying, hey, forget about how many you're going to do and do them good. I'd rather you do 5 good pull-ups where you're really present for them than 20 of them where you're swinging around and your form's all over the place. And not to single out the pull-up, but any exercise, just do them well and don't be hung up on this competitive, oh, I got to do more reps than this guy next to me did. It's not about competing with the guy next to you. It's about doing the best you can do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I do emphasize the kind of, I find that competitive drive, looking at the guy next to you and seeing like, oh, he can do this, so I can bust out one more. I find that really drives me.
There's nothing wrong with being inspired by somebody else. I want to inspire people. I'm inspired by other people all the time. I see somebody do something and I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I want to train to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. But there's a difference between that where it's a positive thing and when it turns into this shame thing or where you're like, you're hurting yourself because you're not good enough, you're not living up to someone else's idea. And that's when it becomes a slippery slope.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So another thing I want to talk about. So you do. So if you guys haven't seen his pictures before, just go Google it, and you'll see all these pictures of Al probably doing handstands on, overlooking a building, or on the monkey bars, or holding himself up like a flagpole. Or he actually likes to use his brother your brother does like a warrior two pose, and then you just grab his leg and his arm and you hold on to that.
That's our trademark move, yeah.
Yeah, the human flagpole. So can you talk about how people ask me this too, like how do you get up to doing this pose, or how do you get so good that you can do this? Can you tell people how to get there?
Yeah, it's one of those things. There's specific progressions that people can follow, but I don't think that's what you're really asking me about here. We were talking before just about building that foundation and not getting too romanticized by this flashy move. Mm-hmm. So when a beginner is interested in training the flag, usually my first question is, well, can you do 10 pull-ups yet? And it's like, well, if you can't do that, don't even ask me about the flag until you can do 10 pull-ups. So there's some basic foundational things that have to be there first. But then once that's established, training for a move like a flag, it goes back to what we were saying before, just about the process and being patient with it. And it can take years to really get some of those more advanced moves. You mentioned the handstand earlier. I know it's something we were talking about a little bit before, about what an elusive skill the handstand can be, the freestanding handstand. And that's one of those things where people talk about mastering a move. How long does it take me to master the handstand? It's like, well, I've been doing them for a long time. And I'm better at them than I used to be, but I definitely wouldn't say I'm anywhere near mastering it yet. Mm-hmm. And I feel like anyone who trains the handstand, the longer you train it, the more you start to realize how much there is to really the nuances and to really mastering it, and how your initial perspective of it might have been much smaller than how much is really involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that goes back to it. There's a very yoga part of yoga philosophy that's saying, imperfection is perfection, that you're never going to get to that perfect pose, but the perfection of it lies in the fact that it's not perfect.
That's very Zen sort of statement there. I like that.
Yeah, that works. That works with you. That works with your style, with your approach. So, all right. Here's another question I get a ton. People say, do you do weights too, or do you just do yoga? And I'm like, I do body weight. I do body weight and I do pull-ups. They're like, there's no way. And I tell them, if you're breaking down muscle, then it's going to rebuild itself, and you're going to build muscle mass. Your
body doesn't know the difference between external weight versus it's resistance, right? Resistance is resistance.
Yeah. So can you just to drive it home, can you tell people a little bit more about why you don't need weights to build muscle mass?
Yeah, it's just what we were saying. Whether you're pushing against an external object or pushing against the resistance of gravity, your muscle is pushing against something, it's going to get fatigued, and it's going to adapt. That's what strength training is you break down your muscle by asking it to perform at its limits, and then that kind of gives your body the signal to, oh, this is something I'm going to be asked to do. I need to be more prepared next time. Mm-hmm. Your body regrows and adapts. So whether that adaptation is as a result of pushing a bench press or pushing a push-up, you can get a well-developed chest either way.
Yeah. And you're going to do it better too, because you're actually utilizing your full body when you're doing body weight.
The push-ups are one of those things too, speaking of the push-up, where a lot of guys, especially guys who lift a lot, underestimate. Like, oh yeah, I could do 50 push-ups, whatever. And it's like, really? Like, to even do 30 good, full to the bottom, full lockout, not halvesy reps, not rushing them. To do 30 good push-ups is hard, even for guys who are strong. So I always like to throw that challenge down when people are like, oh, I can't get strong from doing push-ups. It's like, really? Give me 30 nice, clean ones, and then come talk to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Every now and then I'm like, how many can I do right now? And then you're like, 50 push-ups is easy. And you get to 40, and you're like, all right, I'll do more. But yeah, they're fantastic exercises, and the basic moves are the best ones I find. So there's some other stuff that I want to talk about. That's actually, let's tell me about your typical workout week. People love to hear about that kind of stuff.
Well, there is no typical, but the way that I train is different than the way that I would have a beginner client of mine train or a beginner student. And that my training is kind of haphazard in a sense, that I don't have a lot of structure these days. It's kind of, I have skills, general skills that I want to improve, and I almost go into my workouts more as like practice sessions a lot of the times. Like rather than saying, okay, I'm going to do this many sets, this many reps, rest this long, it's like, okay, today I'm going to work on my handstand or work on my human flag or work on the pull-up bar, various things on there. And rather than doing strict sets and reps, it might be kind of free form. Okay, let me work this a little bit. All right, let me take a break, do that, and let me go back. So it's almost, we were talking about music before. It's almost the way a musician might practice an instrument, more like a jam session, and less of, okay, I'm going to sit down and play scales. Although there's a time and place for doing that as well.
So yeah, so it sounds like it's a lot more fun then. It's not just, you're not going in with an agenda. You're going like, I'm just going to have fun. I'm going to work on this thing that I want to be able to do because it makes me happy.
Absolutely, but there is a time and a place for a more regimented, structured training, and I do have those days occasionally. But lately, my training has been more of, I do a lot of workshops, and I know you know this as an instructor. You want your presentation to be on point when you're demonstrating an exercise.
Right.
So when I teach the progressive calisthenics certification, we've got a very specific regimen of exercises that I need to be able to teach people. So a big thing for me in my training is just wanting to refine those skills myself to the point where I can demo them and talk while I'm demoing them and make them look easy. So that's really the main focus of my training, is just so that I can ultimately be a better teacher.
I mean, yeah. That's
at this point, that's where I'm at. That's fun.
All right. And here's something that I really wanted to ask you, because it obviously overlaps with what I'm doing a ton. But I mean, your book is called Zen Mind, Strong Body. You do yoga. Your brother does yoga. I see pictures of you guys doing yoga, but you never call it yoga. You usually never call it yoga. You said, like, I sometimes do yoga, but you don't call it yoga. You call it calisthenics, and it is calisthenics, but people don't understand that yoga is calisthenics.
Right.
So can you tell me a little bit about first off, how did you start doing yoga, and how do you incorporate yoga into what you do today? How often do you do it?
I'm glad you brought this up. This is an interesting conversation that I haven't really gotten into with too many people. But, I have a book called Stretching Your Boundaries, Flexibility Training for Extreme Calisthenic Strength. And a lot of that book is yoga. But it's, like you said, I don't necessarily call it yoga. And I use the word yoga in that book. And I'm like, oh, yeah, a lot of this stuff comes from yoga. And I talk about how I got into yoga in my early 20s in Chicago when I first became a personal trainer. At the time, I was very much into weight training. And a lot of gyms, when you get hired, your fitness manager will kind of suggest, like, oh, take a couple of the classes here so you can kind of see what they're like, get to know some of the other people who coach here. So I took a yoga class just kind of for that reason. Oh, my manager wants me to take some of these classes. And I was really humbled by it. So that kind of was my first awakening of, like, oh, wait, maybe this isn't just something for chicks. Like, this is something I should take a little more seriously. And then it kind of just grew from there. I continued going back because I found it challenging and I found it fun. And, slowly from there, my interests became more and more on body weight and calisthenics. And, it's something I talk about in that book, is how we have these terms, yoga, calisthenics, and they're just labels, but movement is movement. And a lot of these modalities, the movements transcend whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it a push-up, or if you want to call it chaturanga, I mean, this is this.
Right.
So it doesn't matter that much when you look at the big picture. Movement is movement, and I guess that's why I don't get too hung up on the names. And from a marketing standpoint, there was a point where I said, okay, hey, I'm going to market myself as a calisthenics guy. Mm-hmm. And you went more the yoga angle, but here we are talking about the same exercises, right?
Same exercise, pretty much the same body type. I mean,
yeah, movement is movement. Like there's that famous Shakespearean quote, right? A rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. So, push up by any other name still be a great workout for your chest.
Yeah, exactly. I get kind of, I mean, yeah, it's very interesting trying to, because you say one thing and there's all sorts of notions, there's all sorts of preconceptions that come up. So I say yoga and instantly, what pops into your head, like yoga pants, girl, skinny, Zen. So and I say push up and it's like guy, football, strong, man. But they're the same. There's so much of it's the same. So, I probably could have had a lot easier time doing what I'm doing if I had just come out and said stretching for men. But it's fun doing this, trying to flip everything and flip.
You found a niche for yourself that had been kind of untapped, which is marketing yoga more towards men, because a lot of guys, like you said, see it as a women's thing. So I mean, in that sense, I think you have a unique thing that you're doing there, and obviously people are responding to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's the advice that I always give people when people ask me like, oh, how did you know you were going to be the calisthenics guy, or how did you decide that? And I'm always like, well, it was never something that I made a decision like, okay, now this is who I am. It just kind of gradually took shape on its own, and those were, when I started my blog in 2009, I blogged about yoga, I blogged about kettlebells, I blogged about doing bench presses, I blogged about doing pull-ups, I blogged about a lot of different things. I blogged about running, and the post that seemed to resonate the most with people was the calisthenic stuff. So it was kind of grew out of that, wanting to give people more of like, oh, this is the stuff that people are asking me about. And it also became one of those things where, as I got more and more into bodyweight training, I came to realize that I was better at it than a lot of the other stuff. And it was like, that made it more encouraging for me. You probably have had a similar experience. We're not the biggest guys. We're never going to have the heaviest deadlift in the gym. We're never going to have the heaviest bench press. But when you are in the realm of bodyweight, it levels the playing field. It doesn't matter that this dude who's much bigger than me, if anything, that's a disadvantage when we get on the pull-up bar. Oh, yeah. So that's kind of, for me, part of the appeal of strength training with body weight is, it doesn't matter that I'm not as big as those guys because we're just moving strength relative to mass.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then one other question about the yoga. How did you notice that it changed your body? Or what did you really start to notice after doing it? How did it affect your calisthenics? How did it affect your weight training? How did it affect your physical fitness?
Well, the big thing with yoga, and I always recommend that people do body weight training or yoga or calisthenics or whatever you want to call it for this reason, is it gets you in touch with those subtle nuances of movement that are lost when you're moving machines or when you're doing just very basic, simple movement patterns. When you get into more complex postures, you've got to really be aware of these little parts of your body. Oh, is your hip turned a little bit this way? Oh, is this shoulder shrugging up a little bit? Oh, what's going on with this elbow pit? Is it turned in? Is it turned out? Is your toe pointing out in a weird way? Is your weight rolling into the ball of your foot? And for that reason, it gets you more in tune with movement, and it makes you more aware of all the possibilities. And that's something that a lot of people are missing out on. They may be strong, but they don't really move well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. That's kind of what I noticed. That you really get to start to get in touch with your body and understand. Like you said, those nuances, but also understanding to be able to move your body. Like when you're actually sitting in a pose and you're looking at your hand and you're looking at your arm, and you're like, oh, where is everything? And you actually have some time to slow down and check in with your body. It's pretty cool.
I've met some extremely strong people who moved very poorly. And, those are the types of people who yoga could really be great for.
Yeah. I mean, it is, like you said, it's humiliating. It really is a humiliator, yoga, when you do it for the first time. I thought badass. And then I did my first Bikram class, and halfway through the class, I was done. I couldn't believe I made it through the class, but I'm still shocked. I made it through. But anyways,
Yeah,
So
no, everybody needs to have that humbling experience sometimes. It's good, you know, to kill the ego a little bit and
yeah, definitely.
that's
You're not going to grow unless you do. So.
absolutely well said.
So I want to talk a little bit more now about, you talked a little bit about diet in your book. You gave your favorite example of your smoothie, your peanut butter, dairy, and banana smoothie.
That's one of
Uh,
my favorites.
Go ahead.
I was just saying it's one of my favorites.
Yeah. um, and you kind of say, don't eat crap, pretty much, but don't have a cheat day because then you just unload everything on that cheat day. And you also are against supplements because of the main, the way that, the big brands talk about supplements, like the big brands that do lots of whey protein, the pre-workouts that are clearly something's probably not good in that for you. But what supplements do you find useful? What supplements do you take any supplements, or do you find supplements that are useful?
You know, I'll tell you, Dean, I do not take any supplements of any kind whatsoever. I drink a lot of water. I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and meats and nuts and dairies and occasionally other treats.
Mhm.
And, you know, I work out. And it's that simple. And it's like, it's amazing to me how many times, even though I reiterate this to people, that people think, oh, no, but there must be something you're taking, right? You can't take no supplements. It's like, no, really. No supplements, nothing. And yet I'm still somehow fit and strong and healthy. And, you know, I have to remind people sometimes, too, that the supplement industry has only existed for a very short amount of time. And people were really strong and fit for a long time before they had protein powders and, you know, all these creatine and whatnot. It's like, don't buy the hype. You know, that stuff, it's I mean, we could talk about this all day, but I don't like to be negative, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's a good thing to not be negative. I mean, I do take supplements. I'm still recovering from a knee injury right now, so I take glucosamine for my joints. I take turmeric inflammation. I take fish oils because that's
Because you read an ad that said you should, probably, right?
I did. I read an ad because that said I should, and I listened to someone who said I should, and everybody that I talk to says that I should. So yeah, I'm buying into the hype. But I'm hoping that eventually I can wean myself off the supplements, and one day I'll get. Right now I'm in that recovery stage, so I'm doing everything that I can to get my body back to where it should be. And are the supplements actually doing anything? Who knows? I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
Hard to determine causality with these sort of things. But I'll tell you, and I talk about this in the book also, I share my experiences, but I always encourage people to draw their own conclusions. And that's something I say at the end of my rant about supplements in the book is, hey, this is my experience. I encourage you to have your own experience. Mm-hmm. And, there's nothing that can substitute for actually trying something for yourself and seeing, if you have an experience that defies what I said in my book, go with your own experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if it works for you, do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess one other question, how often are you, on a given day, how often are you training? Are you doing like 3 hours a day or 1 hour a day or 6 hours a day or?
6 hours a day does not happen very often. But, generally my workouts could be anywhere from as little as 20 minutes to as long as 2 or 3 hours. And, it depends on a lot of factors like, what else I have going on that day, how much time I have available to do it, how well rested I am, how hard I trained the day before, if I'm coming off of a couple of rest days, if I'm planning on doing something the next day and I want to keep a little bit in the tank for that. But yeah, there's really... People like to have these cookie-cutter answers of, oh, this is exactly what Al Kavadlo does every single day. But life is never like that, so I can't answer that question any more thoroughly than that. Okay,
all right, that's fine. Changes. That's probably the best way to do your workouts, anyways. All right, I have 2 more questions.
Yes.
One, you guys have noticed by now that Al has a beautiful, fantastic beard.
Thank you very much. I think I get just as many comments in my YouTube videos about the beard lately as I do about my handstands and my human flag.
Yeah, I get the same. It's like, hey, here's a good pose, and they're like,
right.
My eyes are nice. I'm like,
Right.
Thanks. So I'm trying. This is the effort of about 2 months. Um, thanks.
You got to be patient with these things. You know, it's like getting in great shape. It's the same thing, right? You can't expect a quick fix, right? Beards take time.
So tell me how long it took you to grow your beard, and what's the end goal? What are you aiming for?
You know, I'm like same with working out. I'm not hung up on the end goal. I'm just enjoying the ride, enjoying the beard while I've got it, and however long it gets. It's one of those things. I'll tell you, growing this beard, I usually keep my beard like about the length that yours is right now. And a lot of time in the winter, I tend to let it go a little bit. And this year, I kind of started letting it go sort of at the end of the summer. And now that winter is getting started, it's really getting really big. So I'm kind of excited to see how far it's going to go this winter. But it's one of those things where the beard almost takes more willpower to not trim. You know what I mean? Like sometimes not doing something requires more willpower than doing something. Because every day, like, you know, I wake up and it's like in my mouth, or I'm like eating and it's like getting in my beard, and I'm like tempted to trim. I'm like, no, I got to stay the course. You know, I don't want to cut it. I'm like, I'm going to do this thing. So it's definitely a good discipline to cultivate a beard like this. It's helping me become more zen.
Okay, got it. Does your girlfriend like the beard?
She is a fan of the beard. Well, you know, if the girl doesn't like it, then you gotta. As much as I love beards, you know, you gotta keep the woman happy, right?
Right. As much as I love beards, I like the girl more. So. Yeah.
But I got a good one, and any woman that supports my facial hair endeavors, that's an extra bonus, you know.
Yeah, well, she seems like a pretty badass chick. Let's see. I have one other question. Your tattoos. So you actually talk a lot about, and it seems like it's a huge part of your identity. In your book, you talk a lot about your tattoos and how you initially thought that they would preclude you from a lot of opportunities. But then as you kind of moved up in the fitness world, you realized that they were actually really helpful, and that, you know, Paul Wade, Convict Conditioning guy, reached out to you. He's like, hey, I want you guys on my cover, and I want you sporting your badass tattoos while you do it. Just tell me a little bit more about your tattoos.
Yeah, you know, it's just one of those things. As a teenager, you know, I was drawn to tattoos. Like I said earlier, you know, rock music was a big part of my life in those days, and that's a big part of that culture. And, you know, I love art, and they were just very appealing to me from an early age, and I started getting tattooed as a teenager. And a lot of adults at the time kind of were like, oh, that's such a big mistake. Like, you're closing yourself off from so many job opportunities. Like, no one's going to ever want to hire you because you have a tattoo. And then, you know, as I talk about in the book, it wound up kind of having the opposite effect. And then I wound up getting involved with the Convict Conditioning books because they wanted somebody who kind of had that rough look, who could also demonstrate some advanced calisthenics moves. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's very ironic that it actually opened a door for me career-wise. So, you know, it just goes to show how unpredictable life can be, and how you got to just follow your heart and not listen to haters and not listen to naysayers.
Oh yeah, I know. Life is weird. I didn't think I'd be here. 2 years ago, I was training for a government job, and now I'm teaching yoga. So things got weird. And
I love that story.
Yeah, I'm just rolling with it. So now
I think you're on the right path.
Say that again?
I said I think you're on the right path.
Hopefully, yes. Thank you. I think I am too. But so I'm actually asking the tattoo question also selfishly, because I want to get my own tattoo now, and I've been not messing around, but I've been really into a mantra lately that I thought up when I was writing a blog one day, when I had the creative juices flowing, and I was getting really into this blog, and I decided that I am an authentic, positive force of inspiration, and I want to get. I'm thinking of getting it somewhere on my chest, my thigh, somewhere. And another reason is because all the guys that I look around in the industry, you know, I look at some of the big yoga instructors, like people like Dylan Warner, Dylan Werner, excuse me, and then even the Broga instructor, the Broga founder, Rob. I don't know if you've had a chance to meet any of those guys, but and everybody has these big tattoos, and I'm like, all right, I gotta jump on somehow, and I have to have some art. But can you give me one or two suggestions before I delve into
The first piece of advice I'm going to give you is don't get a tattoo because you think you should for your image, or get one because it's personal and it's meaningful to you. It's a very personal decision. So don't do it for somebody else. Do it for you. And beyond that, yeah, find an artist that you trust and you feel comfortable with, whose work you like the aesthetic of, and think long and hard about what you want and where you want it. And you know what I always tell people too is, hey, because people say to me like, oh, I want to get a tattoo, but what if I change my mind, or what if I decide I don't like it a year later? It's like, well, then you just get another one.
Yeah, you just get another one, and you put it under something.
That's how I wound up, with this many. Is you get bored. Right, yeah. All right, well, I'll get one here now. So there's always another spot.
Yeah, well, you've covered all. I mean, what do you have left now? You don't have any on your back, right? Or do you?
I got some room. It's amazing how much skin you have when you start getting a tattoo, and you start noticing new spaces. I've got plenty of room on my chest and my ribs and my thighs, so I can keep adding to my collection for as long as I desire to.
Yeah, lots of skin left. All right, Al. Well, I guess I'm gonna leave it at that. But can you give people just before you go, can you give people 3 tips on how they should approach their workout? How should they approach fitness and just being healthy in general?
My 3 quick tips would be: try to find something you like, because if you force yourself to do something you hate, you're not going to stick with it for long enough to see results. Try not to be too hung up on the results. Just do it to do it. And the last one is just to hold on, I'm getting distracted by that phone ringing. Sorry. The first one is find something you like. The second one is don't be too hung up on the goal. And the third one is, if the thing that you like winds up not being something you like, don't be afraid to try something else. Don't think that if the first thing you do isn't the right thing for you, that, forget it, I give up. Keep trying until you find the right thing. Cool.
All right, awesome. Well, Al, thanks for all your time today. I'm sure that the Manful Yoga community is going to really enjoy this. And you guys should definitely go check out a copy of Al's new book. It's an ebook, Zen Mind, Strong Body, and it'll be available at dragondoor.com. Does that work?
Yeah, they can go to my website also, alkavadlo.com.
Okay, awesome. I'll put all those links in the bottom. All right, Al, that's all I got. I'm sure we'll be in contact the next few months. Hopefully, we can work out something with Dragon Door. Who knows? Life is very unpredictable at this point, so I have no idea what's in store for the next year.
Enjoy the ride, Dean. We're working out.
We're working out, yeah. That is his tagline, by the way, and you hadn't figured out. All right, I'll see you guys later. See you.